Olá, bem-vindos a mais uma live da Comunidade Shalom. Nosso evento já vai começar. Antes, se inscreva no nosso canal no YouTube. É muito fácil, basta acessar shalom.org.br/YouTube e confirmar sua inscrição. Ative também o sininho para receber as notificações de vídeos novos. Ah, você já está inscrito? Interaja ao vivo no chat durante a transmissão. Aproveitem mais este conteúdo que preparamos para vocês.
Olá, boa noite para todo mundo, sejam todos bem-vindos, bem-vindas, Bruchim Abaim, Bruchim Abaot. Estamos muito felizes que vocês nos acompanhem nesta noite toda especial. Hoje nós temos o privilégio, a honra de ter conosco alguém que está por dentro do que está acontecendo na Ucrânia. Infelizmente, quase um mês de guerra e parece que alguma coisa maluca aconteceu no nosso planeta. Nós imaginávamos que o corona era a última praga, nós vimos que tem mais pragas ainda, infelizmente. E hoje nós temos a oportunidade, o privilégio de ouvir de maneira direta e ao vivo a nossa querida Alisa Tzipi Zilbershtein. A Alisa, o Tzipi, é uma estudante do último ano da escola rabínica em New York, no JTS. Antes dela estudar no JTS, ela morava em Kiev, na cidade que hoje é o centro das operações militares, cidade onde ela pretende retornar para trabalhar como rabina, assim que sentir segura para fazê-lo ela e seu marido. Tzipi tem feito o possível e o impossível para ajudar os amigos, familiares, a família que está em Kiev, né? E hoje nós vamos ter a oportunidade de entender melhor essa história e ver como alguém que nasceu nesse lado do mundo está se formando e estudando. Quero acrescentar mais duas coisas importantes. A Tzipi foi aluna de nossa rabina, a rabina Luciana. A Luciana foi professora de Talmud de Tzipi, né? E também ela foi indicada por nossa amiga, né? Que foi uma sócia da nossa comunidade. Ela encontrou judaísmo na Shalom, tornou-se importante, foi para JT, se formou rabina. Estou falando da rabina Marcele Hall, que também é conhecida da Tzipi. Portanto, tem duas pessoas conhecidas da nossa comunidade que nos ajudaram a fazer esse meio do caminho e poder ouvir direto da Tzipi esta história e como nós, aqui em São Paulo, em Brasil, como uma sinagoga massorti, uma sinagoga igualitária, compromissada, podemos ajudar nesse momento tão delicado. Welcome, Tzipi. Brucha
Thank you.
Ba'a. We are delighted that you are with us this night, and we'll want to start a little bit about your story. Tell us about your upbringing and how you become interested in Judaism, crazy enough to go into rabbinical school.
Thank you, Rabbi Gottfried, and thank you so much, Comunidade Shalom, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to talk to you today. That is very, very important, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So, I don't think we have 3 hours for me to explain the whole path of how I got to New York. But to put it
Fair enough, a little bit.
a little bit. So, I was born when it was still Soviet Union, so we did not have Jewish education as children. And of course, I was not brought up Jewish as kids do in more, lucky countries. So, and I became interested in my roots and in Judaism in my early 20s, I would say. And I started to I first went to a synagogue. I was in China at that time. I'm telling you, it's a long story, but I was in China.
No. Wait.
Yeah.
2 questions before we start. Your parents told you that you are Jewish or you discovered it? How is this process?
Yeah. What happened is that the neighbors at my building where we lived, they said that I'm a Jew. It's a curse, it's a bad word in Russian. So, and I came to parents and said,
Be a
what does
Jew?
this mean?
Be a Jew?
But bad word. I don't know how you call Jews as a bad word in Portuguese. Do you have?
Actually, in Portuguese, Jew is not a bad word, but we understand in other languages.
Well, there is a special bad word for Jews in Russian language. So I heard people saying that about me, and I didn't know. And I went to parents and asked, what does this mean? And then they said, what does this mean? And this is how I began learning that I had, Jewish ancestry. And yeah. So I went to synagogue for the first time. I started to go to Chabad community because that was the only community around me at that time. I remember how I went for the first time at the synagogue, and there was gates, and I looked at it and I was like, can I go inside? Will they accept me? But they accepted me very nicely. And since then, it was a long journey.
Which city in China? Hong Kong, Beijing?
Shenzhen, it's near Hong Kong. It's like satellite city of Hong Kong, very close.
Okay. And how you arrived to this city?
To Shenzhen?
Yes.
That will be another story.
Okay,
I went
okay.
to study to China. I studied Chinese language there. Doesn't matter for now. But I traveled. Then there was a long travel. Then I went to Sweden. I studied in Sweden, in Paideia, European Institute for Jewish Studies. Then I went to Germany.
I know. We know Paideia. Rani Yager was many.
Yes, he's a good friend of mine.
Yes, Rani, it's the partner of my brother, Esteban, the founders of Beit Tefillah Israeli in Tel Aviv.
Aha, you see, we're all connected. So Rani is a good friend of mine.
It's a small world.
It is definitely a small world. Yeah. So then I went to Germany and I got my master's degree in Heidelberg in Germany, and it was called.
Just a record. Heidelberg. It's the place where Rabbi Fritz Pincus, the liberal rabbi who came to São Paulo, who found the congregation in São Paulo, and the son-in-law, it's active member of the congregation.
Okay, connected there too.
Oh, absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah, so got my master's degree, and then at some point in 2014, I moved to Kiev, and I got married with my husband. He's in this room, but he's pretending he's not here. His name is Victor. And we got married, and I moved to Kiev with him. I was not born in Ukraine, but I'm a Ukrainian resident. And his parents, Tatiana Vladimirovna and Valery Pavlovich, they are in Kiev right now. And I just spoke to them 15 minutes ago, and they're doing okay. There was a very big explosion near them last night. It was hit by a rocket. So it wasn't an explosion on the ground. It was hit by an airstrike, and it was a big shopping mall that got exploded. And so, but it was very close to them, and they said it was a very huge, blast and sound, and the windows were shaking. And actually, about 4 days ago, the rocket fell into their building that is next to them, and there was again a huge explosion, but that was very close. Like their building and building next to them got hit by a rocket as well. So, and they're saying, thanks God, Baruch Hashem, our windows are on the other side, so they did not shatter. They're very positive people. But this is the reality that we are living in right now. Yeah. So I ended up in Kiev. I started to work there in Kyiv-Mohyla University at the Jewish program there and taught Jewish philosophy. And I was very happy. I was very happy there. It was a very happy period of my life.
Tzipi, tell us about the Jewish life in Kiev. How many Jews are there? How is the Jewish community organized? Are they active, engaged or not? Tell about before the war.
Before the war. So I think that in Ukraine, it's very hard to estimate how many Jews. So let's say from 100,000 to 400,000.
Wow.
Something in between. And the reason why it's hard to estimate is that traditionally Jews don't like to be, counted. So every time there is a count, they're like, not really willing to say that they're Jews. That's why we don't really know. And not every Jew in Ukraine is a part of Jewish community where someone also can, kind of count them. There are a lot of secular Jews, Jews who are not religious, Jews who, are not members of any communities, but still identify as Jews very strongly. So Kiev is very diverse. And before war, it was very wonderful and flourishing Jewish community there. And we have all denominations. We have Masorti community, and I'm a member of Masorti community led by Rabbi Reuven Stamov and his wife Michal Stamova. So this was my community all up till now, and I still consider them my community. And we have we have Reform, we have Orthodox several, we have Chabad, we have what is called Karlin Stolin Hasidic community, we have secular community, we have secret Kabbalistic mystical community.
Okay,
well, not so secret since everyone knows that they are. We have a community of Jews who came to Kiev from the occupied territories of Donbass when that happened in 2014. So they established their own community and they don't allow anyone except people from that area. So
that's cool. A very Jewish story that there are
yeah.
separate congregations.
So yeah, we have all sorts of communities.
And the language from Russia, from Ukraine, are the same or different?
I mean, the language that we speak?
Yes.
So Ukrainian language and Russian language, they're not the same languages. They're pretty different. Like I understand and can speak some Ukrainian, but also I have a horrible accent. So they don't always tell me, please stop, don't don't try. But Jewish communities are typically Russian-speaking communities in Ukraine. So most of the Jews in communities, they speak Russian, and our the Siddur, for example, that we use is Hebrew Russian and not Hebrew Ukrainian.
Not Ukrainian. And all Ukrainians can read Russian?
All Ukrainians in Ukraine can speak and read Russian. And it's not Russian, like very few Russians can speak Ukrainian, but all Ukrainians can speak Russian.
Okay, I see.
That because culturally it happens, because Russian language was very much implemented in Ukraine by government, so everyone learned it. But these are two different languages.
I see. So when you teach at that time in Kiev, in which organization do you work?
I worked in the university. This is the central university in Ukraine. It's called Kyiv-Mohyla University. And there at that university, there is a Jewish program, which is coordinated by the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies. And the director of this program, his name is Vitaly Cherneyovanenko. And he is in Kiev right now. He decided not to leave. He decided to stay and defend the city. And he's doing a lot of work there. And we collaborate and we do work together because I helped to collect money and transfer them to Kiev, and he gives me the contacts who need money right now, especially Jews and his colleagues who worked in the same organization, the Association for Jewish Studies in Ukraine. My colleagues, his colleagues, and people who need money for food, medications, things like that. Professors in Ukraine are not very rich. I can tell you, it's not like in the United States, for example. So
that's worldwide, except no, it's all the same. Yeah.
Yes, and this is where I taught. It's a very good program. It was open for Jews and non-Jews alike to teach Jewish.
And how many students do you have in the class? Like, tell us how kind of course that you teach there.
So I taught there for 3 years, and first year I was just a teacher, but second year I became the manager of my part of the program and then the director of that program. So it was a 2-year program, and we would have around maybe 20 to 30 students per year. So we would have 20, let's say.
And there were young people, old people.
Any
Oh,
kind
married.
of people.
Any country, okay.
Anyone. I mean, they typically this would be people with at least a bachelor degree, and
Okay.
from that. So if people had some education, that they could apply and work. But I also worked in the, admission committee. I also worked there, so I meet people and could see who's going to come to program, who's not. So I knew every student. And when the war began, I reached out to a lot of my students, and that's how I also can work with people and help people. One of my students right now is in Sweden, and I can tell you a story if you want to know.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this student of mine messaged me and said, I am in Sweden right now. She drove car with her children, dog and cat on her own to Sweden. That's about 2,000, 3,000 kilometers from Kiev.
Wow.
So she drove car to Sweden, and she ended up in Sweden, and she tried to, it's very, very hard right now in Europe because there are millions of refugees. We estimate 4 million refugees right now from Ukraine and Sweden. So the countries that are in border with Ukraine, they are overwhelmed very much. So she passed like Poland, she passed these countries where they could stay. They got into Sweden, and in Sweden, they were not really ready to welcome refugees at that point yet. I hope things better now, but So she messaged me and she said, we cannot get registered. We're in the middle of Sweden somewhere. We ran out of gas. What are we going to do? So, and what I do as a very typical Jewish person, don't tell this to anyone, but, I immediately contact my friends in Sweden because I studied there. So I contact the director of Paideia, and they said,
yes.
And they contacted her, and they found even an interpreter because she doesn't speak English so well. They found an interpreter, and they helped her, and they moved her to Stockholm and found an apartment for her in Stockholm. So right now she has at least a place to stay while they're being registered as refugees. And then their story continues. But it was a very long and difficult journey. And this is part of my work here from New York. I'm connecting people who need, shelter, who need apartments. And I also send money for people who need to buy gas because she ran out of gas and she couldn't drive anywhere, or food or medication, all kinds of things. So that's a story about my student.
Tzipi, tell us about your in-laws that are now right out in Kiev. How's their life there? They have possibility of buying stuff to food. They have opportunities to be safe. They must move, or their choice to stay there.
So my in-laws in Kiev, they are relatively okay. I cannot say that they're safe because I just told you that the rocket hit really next building to them. So it can be any minute, their building. So they're not safe there. They're elderly people. So it's hard for them to run back and forth to the shelter. So they mostly stay home and don't go anywhere. And there almost every night in Kiev, there are explosions and there are siren, airstrike siren buzzing all the time. So they're basically staying at home. They have some food stored for them. They did start to get worried that there will be no electricity and the food in the refrigerator will go bad. Because yesterday when there was a big explosion in their area, it damaged the heating system in the apartment. So they don't have heat right now because the hot water that is supplying heat to their apartment was cut off. So right now it's cold. So now they're thinking, what if there's no electricity? And so we were talking to them if they need to buy maybe other types of products that, that don't spoil so easily, and, things like that. They still can go to the store. But again, as I said, last time, Valery Pavlovich went to a store. He went on the street and he passed like street, and 10 minutes after that, the rocket hit exactly the place where he went. You can imagine for Tatiana Vladimirovna, it was a very stressful moment because the husband is outside. She starts to call him. He, doesn't pick up the phone. It was very scary. So yes, they can go to the store, but it's very dangerous. Every time they go outside, it's dangerous. And about the reason why they decided to stay and not to leave, I can tell you that people make this decision for various reasons, and some people stay because they want to defend the city. And I'm talking now, Jews and non-Jews. Not every Jew decided to get evacuated. Not every Jew went somewhere else. A lot of Jews decided to stay. Some joined the army, some joined the civil defense, some are volunteers who are helping those who are in need. So, a lot of people, for example, some of rabbis stay, for example, a Chabad rabbi of Kiev and Ukraine, Moshe Asman, he stayed and he is doing all the charity himself, driving cars and getting food to people and all of that. So Rabbi of Dnieper also stayed in Dnieper. That's another city in Ukraine. So some people stay for that reason. And that's very important. So, for example, people with military background as well, they decide to stay, right? So another reason why people stay is that, especially for people who lived in their apartment all their lives, like our parents, it's very hard for them to leave everything. And the life of a refugee is not a happy life. It's not, as I always say, it's not a solution of the problem. It's not a happy ending when someone got evacuated from the country. It's just the beginning. It's the first step on the long path of suffering and troubles and pain, because people need to leave everything that they have. As a mental exercise, I do this. I look at my apartment, everything that I have, like my books, my things, everything, and I imagine today I take a small bag and I leave, and everything that I have here is going to stay, and I can't take anything. And it's heartbreaking. Even I cannot imagine how to do that. And for elderly people, that's even harder because they're very, very attached. And imagine if you are, let's say 70, 80 years old, and you're on the road, and roads are destroyed mainly. There's shootings. You can get shot on the road because people die also when they drive. And what if you don't feel good? What if you have a high blood pressure, for example? It's very, very difficult for elderly people to go on this journey without medical assistance, and feeling really, really bad, for example, on the road. Who is going to help them? So, for all these reasons, they decide to stay, and they, hope for the best. It's very hard.
Tell about, there's more Victor's family on Kiev?
No, these are our two relatives who are in Kiev. Things are complicated. The other part of the family is in Crimea, but we're not going to talk about it now as well.
Okay.
It's, all our lives are very complicated. Who was born where, who is now where, all these countries, it's very hard.
Tzipi, Rabbi Marcel Hall, who's watching us from New York also, asked, what's the best way to help the Ukrainian people right now?
Well, that's a great question. Is there one best way to help Ukrainian people right now? I think it depends on every person and what cost do they want to have. For example, I will share a link with you of how to help Masorti community, the community that I came from. This is the community, what happened to them, Rabbi Stamov, what he did in the beginning, the first days of the war. Actually, they were prepared even before the first days of the war. They did a pretty good logistics and management. So they secured the place in a different city, which is called Chernovitz. It's on the border with Moldova, if you imagine the map of Ukraine, southern border of Ukraine. And a big part of my community got evacuated there in very first days of the war. And they stayed there for a couple, I would say maybe 2 weeks. And then they got evacuated further. Rabbi Stamov went to Israel temporarily with his family. A big part of the community got evacuated to Berlin. And they're staying in Berlin right now, in Germany. So you can help them. And, they really need money because they need to stay somewhere. And now they're preparing documents of people who want to make Aliyah and all of those, questions. And with people who will make Aliyah, they need money. And on top of that, there are people who did not leave Ukraine, members of my community who stayed in Ukraine, and they also need help. I forgot to mention one of the reasons why people can't leave Ukraine is actually if you are a man of age 18 to 60, you're not allowed to leave even if you want. So our male members, a lot of them just had to stay because they cannot cross the border. So they all of them need help. So you can always help this community in particular. But there are many other things that you can do.
So Tzipi, you talk about the possibility of going to Israel and make Aliyah. Tell us about the relationship between Ukraine and Israel, how the people see Israel as a refugee option or not, and what are you think that Israel it's doing well? Yesterday, the president of the Ukraine speak at the Knesset was very moving and very tough speech. Do you have the chance to see, hear, read about that, about this speech? Your thought about that?
Of course, I saw the speech, and I personally am in constant communication with people in Ukraine, and I get all the news. And using this device, you can almost as being there, and get all the information as fast as people get it there. So of course I saw that speech, and I really, really liked it. And I'm very grateful to President Zelensky for saying what he said in the speech, because now I don't have to say it. I just can go watch what he said, And I agree with a lot of things. And I think that he very carefully kind of pointed out some of the problems that we are facing in terms of Israel not really accepting refugees and, making it hard even for Jews who are Jews but have, problems with documents to enter. You can imagine that in our community, there are a lot of people who are converts, not because they converted from, Christianity, but because there were no documents, for example, to prove their Jewishness. And we have, substantial amount of converts for that reason. People who have Jewish ancestry, it's just, this kind of a process, very common in the former Soviet Union, because, after communism, people need to get reintegrated. So we have a huge amount actually of converts, and they were not allowed into Israel because they did not accept our Masorti conversion as a valid conversion. So this is another pain of ours, Jews who are being turned down.
But under the law of return, it's no problem about the conversion, because the son-in-law of a Jew, it's allowed to enter Israel. The recognition is another step, but that's a very important point. Speaking about Zelensky, what are the thought of your in-laws or the people say about that the president of the Ukraine is a Jew?
So I think
it's like my mother-in-law, my grandma will say, it's good for the Jews or bad for the Jews?
I think so far it was good for Jews. And if you noticed how President Zelensky spoke in that speech, and he is like, I'm talking to, people, citizens of Israel, Israelis, and then he says, brothers and sisters. And it was very interesting note, he's talking to Israelis as brothers and sisters. So we hope that it's good for Jews. I think that it's a very, very unique historical event that Ukraine chose a Jewish president. He's very well known that he is a Jew. It's not a secret. I mean, the previous president, they were also saying that he was Jew, but that was a bit, kind of not so clear. Some people believe, some not. He's like his father was Jewish, but maybe not.
It's like an urban legend.
Yeah, but this one, it's like 100% no.
Yes, he speaks Hebrew, so.
Yeah, so, and when he got elected, he had the support of 70% of people in Ukraine. And in Ukraine, it's a free democratic election, not like Russia. It's absolutely clear. So he was very, very, very popular, partially because he was, he was an actor in the TV show when he played the president. And then people saw how he played the president and really liked him and, voted for him to be a real president. And you see, this is so, crazy. It's really crazy. All of this events, and now this person, a Jewish person, is this really amazing president who is defending the country during the war. So he is very, very popular right now. I'd say he's 90% popularity rating in Ukraine, and people are really counting on him as being a Jew. For example, that he can address Israel and get a support, because we really need the Iron Dome. We need the system that protects Ukraine from the airstrikes from Russia, and who knows better how to do it than Israel. So people are really counting on him that maybe he will help to achieve that, and we're really hoping that Israel will help us. Though I think better than I do, that it's very complicated political issues with Syria and Russia and wars and all of that.
Yes.
But
Well, actually, at the beginning of the war, we see the complexity of the situation. In one hand, the government of Israel was stayed and publicly in favor of Ukraine. So at the same time, Putin speak about Syria and the delicate border that its impact. So it's very complex situation in the Middle East. And
as usual,
this new kind of war, it's not like it's more complex than two countries. They're much more complex. And this going to the question, for many people, they have some historic memories about the Ukrainian people during the Holocaust. And in this scene, in this photography, the Ukrainian people doesn't look very well. Now, for the first time, they look the Ukrainian people in another way. So they're changed. They have the possibility of see another opportunity. Do you feel that it's an important moment to change, like one way of view of the Ukrainian people?
Well, first of all, from a Jewish perspective, we cannot really separate, Jews and Ukrainian people, because we are all like this. Our families are mixed families. We don't have like a very separated Jewish community. So for us, when, I don't even know like how to answer your question. Like, we cannot say we look at Ukrainian peoples differently than we look at Jews, because we are, the same people.
In the same way. Okay, I understand that this looking, it's from the other side. But going back to your point of view, Marcele want to know if the people there are still able to celebrate Shabbat and Jewish holidays in any form.
It's interesting that in Chernovitz, there was such a huge celebration of Purim. I did not expect it. People really celebrated. I mean, Purim, it had a very special meaning this year for us, of course, and took a lot of inspiration and hope from the story of Purim that God will help us. And, maybe in some synagogues, people read instead of Haman, they even say Putin, saying that this is a man of our times. So there was a big celebration in Chernovitz community in Ukraine. It's a relatively safe place right now. It's not being bombarded or anything. So, and people danced and they sing, because people need, hope and need spark of life and need some kind of joy. So I was very surprised, but they really did that. So, and about Shabbat and other things. Of course, if that's important for people, they find a way how to do that. And I'm sure that I know people who are in Kiev, who are observant, they continue to observe.
One of the people of our congregation, Cesar, asked, they receive a notice that he want to know if it's true or not, that Jews cannot receive the passport to leave Ukraine. It's fake news or it happens?
What does it mean not to receive the passport?
That they're not allowed to receive the passport to leave Ukraine.
I don't really know what does it mean to receive passport. People, they have passports. If you have a passport, you go and you leave.
Yes, they don't allow to receive the passport, they retain the passport not to leave Ukraine.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I need to see the source of that, but looks like fake news.
Okay, it's like a fake news. Okay.
Everyone who wants to leave can leave. if you're an Israeli citizen, then it's like green corridor. You can go very fast. There are a lot of Israeli embassy officials who work at the borders, and they will meet you and greet you and take you to Israel very, very fast. So if you don't have an Israeli citizenship, then you cross border with your Ukrainian passport. And then again, if you have documents for Aliyah, then they will transfer you very fast. If you don't have documents for Aliyah, either they will issue a document for you at the border if you have some documentations to prove that you're Jewish, or if not, then there are options. Maybe you go to, some people go to Berlin or some other Jewish communities in Europe. So.
Okay, when I will move back to Tzipi, how do you choose to go to JTS? Why be a conservative rabbi? Why no other denominations? How is your journey in our movement?
I am, to be honest, a very huge fan of conservative movement. I know it's not politically correct that I prefer one movement over the other, but I like my movement better than any other movement.
We are very engaged in our movement. We're very proud of our denomination, and we're proud of growing in Latin America. So it's okay to be proud of.
Okay, thank you. And the reason why I like it, because it has everything, the best of all of the words. It's traditional, it's important, halacha is important, study is important, I really love our education system. I think it's very, very deep, and you can study, everything, at a very, very profound level. Like my kind of specialty, what I'm studying is Hasidic studies and Jewish mysticism. But also people who want to specialize in halacha can do that. People who want to be specialized in Talmud can do that. There are so many, ways. Or if you want to be specialized in, Jewish feminism, you can do that. If you want to be LGBTQ, activist, you can do that. So they say it has everything that you can imagine and in balance. That's why I like it. And I always say, like, as a woman, where else could I go? It's
I see. Okay. So in your original plan to come back to Kiev, if you arrive there, you see yourself like a congregational rabbi, teacher rabbi. How do you see if you can make your own design of your perspective?
So before the war, 1 week ago, before the war, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I had a number of interviews with Rabbi Mauricio Balter and with, I don't know if you know, Tehila Ruben, who is our Masorti also representative. And we talked to them.
Just for explain for everyone, Rabbi Ruben is a rabbi currently in Kiev, Masorti in Kiev. Rabbi Mauricio Balter is the CEO of the Masorti Olami, the rabbi who take care of all the Masorti congregations in the world and also in Ukraine. So go ahead.
So I met with all of them several times, and we were discussing my plans, since I was planning to go back to Kiev in June after the ordination. And, we were discussing, what am I going to do? Am I going to maybe work in Odessa community that is already established and they don't have a rabbi? And we were saying, can
Odessa.
I work there? Yes.
Okay.
Or actually our last plan, maybe a couple of days before the war broke out, was to establish a new community in Lviv, because there is no Masorti community in Lviv or Lvov, the historically very important Jewish city.
Tell us why Lvov is so important.
Well, it is important because a lot of great scholars came from there and a lot of great rabbis. It is closer to Poland. Do you have someone in mind?
No. Tell us about the main character that you have in mind in Lvov.
I should have get prepared for that question better.
Okay,
I don't have anyone right now coming to my mind, but if I come up with something, I will let you know. Okay. Maybe I'll send you an email and then you send to all the congregants, so they know that I'm not that illiterate in the history of Lvov. But it's on the border with closer to Poland. So it was Poland at some period of time, also known as Galicia, this area. I'd say that Martin Buber lived in Lviv at some point of time. How does this sound?
Okay. So, and another question, I will go to the question of our congregation. So they ask about, what about the neo-Nazi group? You feel in Russia, in Ukraine, some pressure against the Jews or not?
So it's a very good and it's a very important question, because there is a lot of misinformation around it and a lot of speculations around it. And I think that the problem is that Russian propaganda is portraying Ukraine as a Nazi country, and their whole, what they call a special military operation, it has a goal of liberating Ukraine from Nazis. So every time we talk about Nazis, then it means that we are in this area of Russian propaganda. To put it simply, we have a Jewish president. I think it's enough of an evidence that this is not a Nazi country. And you can meet all of this, rabbis and representatives of the Jewish community who already spoke a lot that this is not a Nazi country and that this is not a Nazi regime and that is not hostile towards Jews. Are there any Nazi kind of, nationalist groups in Ukraine? Like in every other country, like in Russia, there are groups like that. Like in the United States, there are definitely groups like that. There are small groups. Unfortunately, they exist. There are in Sweden groups like that. There are in Germany groups like that. Unfortunately, they exist nearly in every country of the world. That doesn't mean that these groups have any power or represent anyone. They're very, very small. And if you look at the elections in Ukraine, statistically, kind of pro-nationalistic or far-right parties, they get support of 2.5%, 2% of people, very, very low. So no, there is no danger for Jews from nationalistic groups.
Tzipi, there's a question about if there are any help for Russian Jewish community. What's the status of the Jewish community in Russia in the middle of this conflict? Do you have any information, any inside information? Because you have the possibility of speaking the language, hear the news in the original. So what's happened there?
So since Russia is now being very harshly sanctioned, and it's not a good place for anyone actually to be there. And it's also, there are a lot of people who are getting arrested, and especially people who are activists and people, who participated in any sort of anti-Putin or anti-government activities. It's very dangerous for them. Then another fear is that, again, young people will be drafted to army in Russia soon. So that's also a fear. So actually, now it's a more and more growing amount of Jews who decide to leave Russia. But now it's not that easy, because I will tell you a story of my brother. He was in Moscow, and we decided that it's time for him to leave. And it was done very, very fast. They also couldn't, get a lot of things with them. He and his wife, his name is Dima, and his wife is Natalia. They grabbed a bag and they got evacuated really fast to Uzbekistan, to Tashkent. And it's also a very interesting historical parallel, because in the Second World War, Tashkent and Uzbekistan was one of the places where Jews got evacuated, when Nazi Germany occupied parts of Ukraine. So like in old days, they went to Tashkent, they stayed there for some time. And then I bought them tickets to Israel, and they went to Israel. But it was very complicated, because almost all flights from Russia are now banned. There are very, very few airlines that are actually working. Like Turkish Airlines is one of very, very few. No flights to Europe. They cannot go to Europe. So another problem is that their cards, bank cards, are not working anymore. That's why I needed to buy tickets for them, because they cannot even buy tickets online anymore. In most of the airline kind of search, where you can search for tickets, you can go and check that Russia is not even listed among countries anymore, because no one is flying to Russia. So
that's meaning that the sanctions are working.
Sanctions are working, but there are also people. There are not a lot of people like that. I have to tell you, majority of Russians, unfortunately, do support the war, and it's breaking my heart, but it's true. But yeah, okay. So here is my brother. Got evacuated very fast. Then they were in Tashkent. Then I bought them tickets. Then they flew to Israel. Then there was a problem. Will Israel accept him or not? Because he had, he had his documents with him, but one document was missing. But the archives didn't work in Russia because of what's happening, and he didn't have time. In the end, it got resolved fine, and he's in kibbutz Hanaton right now, our famous conservative kibbutz in Israel. So he's there safely. So a lot of Jews now are trying to leave, but it's not easy for the reasons that I said. Cards not working, not able to buy tickets. What are we going to do? It's another very big problem for Jewish organizations such as Joint, for example, GDC, who support former Soviet Union Jews, because how are they going to transfer money to support elderly people there? Are they going to bring money in bags like in the Soviet Union times? Because there is no SWIFT, there is no way to transfer money. So are they going to bring cash? Also, you cannot bring more than, I think, $10,000 anyway. So that's another big problem. This is what insider information, what Jewish organizations are concerned now. What are they going to do with the Russian Jews?
So the problem is the sanctions are doing well. On the other hand, they're harming the Russian people who want to get out or living there.
Yeah, but that's the goal,
Yeah,
that's the price.
So speaking about family, you speak about your brother. Simone Lederman is the sister-in-law of Luciana.
Okay.
And she thanked a lot for sharing so much with us. And she asked about, they heard many Masoretic Jews are choosing, when possible, to go to Germany over Israel. And she asked if it's about cultural religion reason or because of documentation, or what are your thoughts about that?
Again, I know that your community is, it's a community that, I wouldn't say maybe Zionist community, but pro-Israel community. So I don't want to talk too bad about Israel, but the reason why they go to Berlin is because Israel does not accept them. It's not their choice. They would love to go to Israel. It's just they don't accept them. So they go to countries that accept them. And ironically, as it is, historically, it happened that now Berlin and Germany accept Jews, while Israel does not accept them. Think about it. It's a bit, surreal what's happening.
It's very surreal and very dystopic.
Yeah. And I
it's
think...
a crazy world.
I think that Israel is starting to move in the right direction. And especially I watched again to the Prime Minister Bennett yesterday, that he, I think for the first time, openly said that this is aggression of Russia, that this is war, that they're starting to kind of have a more pronounced position on that. And hopefully they will accept more Jews and more non-Jews, because they only said that they will accept 5,000 Ukrainian refugees when they're 5 million, at least, Ukrainian refugees, internally and externally. So they go where they're welcome. They're welcomed in Berlin.
Yeah, one of the problems in Israel actually now, because the constellation of Bennett, it's quite different from 8 parties. Miri Regev, who now is in charge of the immigration, have a very, very, very complicated policy, different from Yair Lapid, different from Bennett, and but actually Israel is the only country that have actually officers in the border, and they say that any Ukrainian who want to go to Israel under the law of return, and use Tzipi talk about numbers that come from 100,000 to 400,000 Jews eventually eligible to go to Israel, but it's a complicated situation.
We assume that insider information that they have in mind also Russian Jews, and they're
yes.
Some would say that there's maybe around 1 million even Jews, all over Russia. So that's also one of the part of their concern. But on the ground, in reality, these are the people that I love, my community, and they're not allowed into Israel. It's painful for me. What can I say? I wish they were.
Okay, so what are your thoughts about the future? I know that it's very uncertainty, and your plans were absolutely changed dramatically, like less than a month ago. And let's say they have the power of ending the war. What do you see what's happened next with Ukraine and with you and with Victor also?
Well, I think it's impossible to predict. Right now, I'm very, very focused on my work here, helping people in Ukraine from here. It's 26 days of the war. I did not do anything else in this 26 days. That's all I do since I wake up in the morning till I go to sleep. I help people in all possible ways, and I live day by day. I have a calendar, and every night I cross out one day and I say, okay, one day done, one more day. And then this is how I live. Cannot predict what's going to happen. We don't know when the war will be over. And even if it will be over, sometime in foreseeable future, the country is destroyed. It's already destroyed. The factories, production. Another problem is that it's now spring. So Ukrainian agriculture is very, very important in the world because we produce grains and sunflower oil and things like that. So we say that if Ukraine will not have a chance to start the growth of the grains, then the prices of bread will go up in the world like twice, 3 times. So the country is very much destroyed. Some cities non-existent anymore, completely destroyed. Major cities like Kharkiv, half of a city, I would say, destroyed. Mariupol, we assume 90% of the city is damaged right now. So we hope, and there is a very strong belief in Ukraine that when this will be over, we will rebuild everything and we'll make it even better than it used to be. And there is a lot of hope, and good spirit for that. But it's going to be a very, very difficult process. We don't know what's going to happen to Russia. Nothing good, we assume, is going to happen because its economy is going to be destroyed. It's pretty much being destroyed right now. So it's going to be a huge crisis, which we don't know when it's going to end. But, in the situation like this, for me personally, so I don't panic about the future, I kind of focus on my day-by-day work. And I help this person today, this person, and I go to sleep and I think, okay, another day not wasted. That's how I keep my kind of, not going crazy over all of that. But there's a lot of hope. We hope that we will be able to go back. I know a lot of Jews who are looking forward and want to go back to Ukraine. This is their home. And, I already had people saying, are you going to come back to Ukraine? Are you going to be our rabbi? And I always say, of course I will. Just need peace for that.
We are very, very thankful for you, for your time, Tzipi, and actually we'll put the ways to help the Ukrainian Masorti congregation just in a way to see our solidarity, and we hope that sooner we'll go visit Rabbi Tzipi Zilbershtein in some place in Ukraine.
I hope
to
so.
see in place the new congregation. And we are moving from Purim to Pesach, to the liberation, to the Geulah. So we pray actually that as we exit from Egypt, we can exit from this war, and we will see the rebuilding of the Jewish community of Ukraine. And we pray for the safe and the health of your in-laws and your family and friends in Ukraine and Russia. And we're very, very, very happy and thankful for you, for your time, and for opening our mind for this, your journey.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts, Tzipi?
So the final thoughts is, please pray for us. And I think there is a very powerful prayer for Israel that we recite in many communities, when we also pray for the soldiers, and for the safety of Israel. So I think some of the words are applicable to Ukraine, especially remembering that there are Jews who fight in the army in Ukraine, and they also need our prayers and protection. So please keep them in mind as well. And your support is very, very, very important. So if you can publish somewhere, on the social media, on Facebook or somewhere, our community, Comunidade, Shalom.
Shalom. We will publish and we will contribute.
Yes, so people see your support, and also maybe other communities see that they can do something, or other people. We really need more, informational support as well. So, and I will, send your greetings to my community.
Thank you. And also, please, Tzipi, tell about your Instagram that people want to follow you and see what's happened, your actions and your future possibility for helping. What is your Instagram? We'll also put on the description of our YouTube.
Okay, I will. You can do that, and I need to post more. I was so busy lately with all this other tasks, but I will post more and update what's going on. So please follow.
Okay. Thank you, Tzipi, for your time. And we're very, very happy to having you. And maybe soon you can visit us in São Paulo, and you visit. You are compromised to visit you in Ukraine.
You come visit me in Ukraine first.
Okay, deal. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.